Hello and welcome to this week's look at action in movies. And you join us in 1981, 40 years ago. And the movie is, well, it's a classic. I mean, there's no two ways about it. As horror comedy goes and action goes. And certainly as far as I was concerned, it was a very important movie for me because it was the first time that I'd really seen a great many of these credit lists. They run the credits at the end of the movie and you see a long stunt list, and this was really the first time I'd seen all of that, and these names were very interesting to me, and on the strength of that I wanted to find out more about them. And I think that's possibly where a great deal of my excitement as far as the stunt business was concerned. It's always been a fascination of me to be able to speak to somebody who was on that credit list, who worked on that movie, and say, incidentally, what did you do on the movie? For them to then tell me. And afterwards, I will tell you a rather lovely story about Terry Walsh. As you will see, he drives a taxi in the picture. But there's a great deal to cover. And again, I have to say that this is one of those movies that, you know, I could watch that Piccadilly Circus sequence over and over again, and it's very, very compelling when you look at it time and time again. And then later on in life, when you discover just how much work has gone into it to create that action in the first place, not only from the stunt guys, but in particular from the engineering, from the stunt engineering point of view, Dave Bickers, who was responsible for some of the wonderful engineering action that had taken place on this. So we'll take a look at the movie. There's a couple of sequences at the start that we want to get to before we dive into Piccadilly Circus for The American Werewolf in London. So, American Werewolf in London, 1981, and we'll start on the moors with the lads. The lads have been attacked. The werewolf has been shot, and he's lying there thinking, what just happened? And he looks over and he sees the bleeding body of Paddy Ryan, who was the only stuntman, I think, who said, "Hey, I'll do it. I'll be naked on a freezing cold evening." This is the Kessler household. Burst of gunfire. Dougie Robinson taking over and doubling the father, throwing himself back there. Here's Mum, who's just realised what's going on. The guy comes in. Tracy Edden now takes over, and she is pulled out of shot using a ratchet. And this is Piccadilly Circus. There's Paul Heasman right in the middle of shot there as the policeman, and Nick Wilkinson right there in the middle of shot as the policeman as well. Coming through, there's Terry Plummer as the policeman in the background, as the big mad dog runs out into the street. Here's the top deck of the bus. Arthur Howell, Mark Boyle, Rocky Taylor and Billy Horrigan. And the other side, Greg Powell, Tracy Edden, Nick Hobbs and the director JOHN Landis. And this is what happens as Greg slides the bus into position. And they never used it in the final film, unfortunately, but it's Landis throwing himself across the place there, realising what had gone on. And he says, right, I've got that shot. He goes downstairs to see what it was like. Here's the other shot that actually took place. There's Vic driving the bus, throws the bus round. Of course, he has to be assisted round. There's Becker's wheels just underneath that. You can see that. Carl Lafong is the stunt guy that comes off, who's playing the conductor. Ken Shepard in the white car. Rocky Taylor on the motorbike. Nick Hobbs comes out of the top window, down onto the ground. That's obviously a dummy because he's going to get run down like that. And the chaos is ensuing now. There's Mark Boyle sat in the car, and he sat in the car waiting for this impact. And now they're rushing about all over the place. And Billy Horrigan and Sue Crossland in the car. This is Sadie on the left and John Landis on the right. Vic is now driving the car, crashes into them. He gives her a backhander and she's in through the window. And this is the behind-the-scenes footage of how that shot was captured. In they come and through the window she goes. You all right over there, love? No, she's fine. So no problems there. And the stunt boys, being the stunt boys, decided to give him marks out of 10, and they weren't terribly flattering, if the truth be known. Lots of zeros in there. There's Romo bracing himself for this. And look at the dummy coming through the window. It's come out through the window before the impact's happened, but fired across at a certain rate of knots into the chaos. Tracy Eden, God bless her, is lying there on the floor as a body. And this thing's still racing its way through. Terry Walsh is now about to T-bone his taxi, but that's Dickie Beer over the far side in the red car. And screaming in is Peter Diamond, is the policeman in the middle. And these are the overall maps. There was maps drawn at the time which made life a lot simpler. They were planning out what was going to happen, who was going to be where, what was going to happen, because as soon as those accidents took place, then they had to clear that as quickly as they possibly could. This is set up at the aerodrome, so they made all of this set and they get them racing in, and as soon as they get them in, then they have to clear it as quickly as possible so that the road can remain open. And there in the black hat is Alf Joint in the background. It's fascinating to see all of this taking place and all of these incredible names that you see on the credits: Roy Alon, Vic Armstrong, Ken Barker, Dickie Beer, Mark Boyle, Sue Crossland, Clive Curtis, Peter Diamond, Tracy Eden, Sadie Eden, Terry Forrestal, Romo Guerrera, Fred Haggerty, Frank Henson, Nick Hobbs, Billy Horrigan, Arthur Howell, Carla Fong, Gareth Milne, Val Mazzetti, Terry Plummer, Greg Powell, Doug Robinson, Ken Shepherd, Colin Skeeping, spelt with 2 E's on this occasion, Tony Smart, Rocky Taylor, Terry Walsh, Paul Weston, and Nick Wilkinson. This crew of stunt professionals created all of that action as either background action or as significant foreground action. They were either crashing the cars, they were doubling other people, whatever they were doing. And a great deal of that has to go down to this man. This is Dave Bickers, who was responsible for creating a lot of that action, or the engineering the vehicles. The bus is a great example. And Paul, of course, his son, has gone on. Sadly, Dave no longer with us, but Paul has gone on to create more magic with Bickers' action. And in conjunction, of course, on this particular film with Alf Joint, one of the great stuntmen and stunt coordinators from that 50s, 60s period, who threw his hand. Many people, of course, will remember him as the Milk Tray Man and diving 157 feet from the top of that cliff and doing it twice because he didn't know how far up he was. That is dedication. One of the reasons why... You're probably wondering why Alf Joint did it twice if he was uncertain of the height. Well, his eyesight wasn't great, and nobody really told him how high it was, and so the yacht down there had a mast of 100 feet, and somebody had to kind of work it out for him. But nevertheless, to do it twice, that's a gutsy thing to do. No two ways about it. Also, bear in mind the fact you get paid twice, so he's not daft as far as that's concerned. The interesting story as far as Terry Walsh was concerned, I mentioned it at the start, and of course what was going to happen was that they would, just before they were going to do a take, they would have a rehearsal, and a rehearsal on the location, so they knew everything inside out and they could drive in, get to a certain point and go, yep, lovely, right, reverse out and let's go for a take. And they do it very, very quickly. And that was the plan of action here. So Terry is in the taxi, he knows exactly where he's going to go, and just as he gets action over the walkie-talkie, in jumps a couple into the back of his taxi, and the guy says, Fulham Broadway, please, mate. And Terry just looks back and says, righto, governor, and slams on his accelerator and fires away, goes screaming through traffic and gets to within 3 feet of the vehicle that he is due to crash into on the next take, which of course will be the actual take for the film. And the screaming in the back seat, and Terry very casually turns round and says to him, "It's £4, please, governor." And the guy's going for his wallet, and luckily Terry had to then explain to him, "No, it's all right, it's just a rehearsal. You've made a mistake, you've got into the back of a car that isn't really a taxi. I'm not really a taxi driver, I'm a stuntman, and explain the whole thing. Why don't I find you a cab and we'll get you home nice and safely? So that was his plan of action. But that, you know, that's the risk you take. And that's probably why the city council said, yep, you can have the circus, but you can only film on a Saturday into Sunday and a Sunday into Monday, and you can only do it between 3 and 4 in the morning. They had 2 hours in order to get those shots that they wanted to do, and then all of the pickup shots were then done back at Brooklands Aerodrome. So once they finished that, they'd go back elsewhere. And it's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular. It's always been a huge favourite of mine, to pick people out, spot people's faces, and oh, look, there's so and so. And of course, the quality of the film has got better over the years once you've gone from DVD to Blu-ray and 4K or whatever the situation it is now. But it's really very clear now. You can pick people's faces out left, right, and centre. So it's terrific, and it's wonderful to be able to share all of this with you. So I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, something special next week. I know this was special, but next week, extra special, more information to follow. And until then, thanks for watching. See you next time.